What's up everyone, Zach Nuzzle here bringing you another training science video, and today we're going to talk about supersets. We'll be covering a few important studies pertaining to supersets, as well as some mass articles written by Greg Nuckols and Eric Helms on this topic. So first we'll discuss the different types of supersets, then we'll determine which ones are worth doing and how to best implement them into your training routine. So what exactly is a superset? A superset is a training technique that involves alternating between two different exercises until all sets are complete. The two main types of supersets that we'll be discussing today are group supersets and separated supersets. So group supersets involve two exercises that train the same muscle group, like combining pull-ups with a lat pull-down. Separated supersets, on the other hand, involve two exercises that train different muscle groups. And separated supersets can be performed in two different ways, with one way simply involving two non-interfering muscle groups, like biceps and calves, and the other way, called agonist-antagonist paired supersets, involve two antagonistic or opposing muscle groups, like biceps and triceps. Generally speaking, supersets are used primarily to finish a workout in far less time by using your rest time to knock out another exercise. Some people also use them in an effort to increase the effects of their training, believing supersets to be a means of better muscle gains. As we'll cover in this video, performing supersets incorrectly or using a suboptimal method can actually potentially hinder your progress. On the other hand, it seems that there might actually be some physiological benefits to performing supersets in certain ways. To start, we'll take a look at a recent 2017 study that compares muscle activation and muscle damage in grouped versus separated supersets. The exercises used in this study were the bench press, the pec deck or pec flies, leg press, and leg extensions. From this study, we see that group supersets caused greater muscle activation and greater muscle damage. So right off the bat, it would seem that group supersets would be superior for making gains. However, when looking more closely at the study, we see that muscle activation was only higher in the group supersets for the anterior deltoids and the rectus femoris, which are both just supporting muscles and not the prime movers, which would be the vasti and the pecs. Also, muscle activation was based on EMG readings, and we have no solid evidence that increased EMG readings lead to increased hypertrophy or strength. Furthermore, as I covered in my muscle damage video, we know that muscle damage, at least to an excessive degree, isn't necessary for muscle growth, and that too much muscle damage can actually hurt your progress. In this study, creatine kinase levels were tested to determine levels of muscle damage. And while they increased significantly in both groups, they remained elevated from the separated supersets for just 4 days, compared to 5 days from the group supersets, after which no more readings were taken, suggesting that it might have taken even longer than 5 days to recover from the group supersets. And not only were creatine kinase levels elevated for a longer duration from the group supersets, but they were also significantly higher than from the separated sets. So the results of this study suggest that group supersets cause significantly more muscle damage, but likely provide no additional benefit in terms of muscle activation in the prime movers. This may be okay for a very low frequency training program where you might train a muscle group once per week, but it's not ideal for the most optimal training program. So moving on to our next study, another 2017 study by Paz et al. Examined the training outcomes of agonist-antagonist paired supersets, which we'll just refer to as antagonist sets. Again, these are supersets involving opposing muscle groups, like the biceps or triceps, or in this case, the pecs and the back. This study observed volume load, which is calculated as load or weight used times repetitions performed, as well as an EMG index to compare muscle fatigue across multiple sets of bench press and seated rows during antagonist sets and traditional straight sets. Surprisingly, the antagonist set group ended up performing more volume overall, despite displaying more fatigue from the EMG readings. When supersetting antagonistic muscle groups, it's easy to end up with longer rest times in between sets of the same exercise, which could explain why training volume was higher for the antagonist paired set group, since we know that recovery time in between sets is so important to hypertrophy based on several studies. However, the paired group not only performed more volume overall, but they even performed more reps on the very first set of the seated row, which they performed immediately after their first set of the bench press, suggesting some sort of physiological benefit to supersetting antagonistic muscle groups. In his mass article, Eric Helms states that while the specific mechanisms are unknown, I would speculate it has something to do with one or more of the following factors: increased elastic energy storage capacity, altering the Golgi tendon reflex, neuromuscular alteration to inhibition or co-contraction, or perhaps a faster dissipation of metabolites during the rest rest periods as the agonist is moved through its range of motion passively during the antagonist contractions. In other words, there are various potential explanations as to why there appears to be an advantage to using antagonist paired supersets. And regardless of what that reason is, it's worth keeping in mind when designing a training routine. Finally, a new 2019 study by Wallace et al. Compared the metabolic, muscle swelling, muscle activation, and volume load responses to 2 consecutive bouts of upper body pressing using one of 4 advanced training techniques 48 hours apart. These techniques included supersets, drop sets, forced reps, and pre-exhaustion. Group supersets, again where the same muscle group is trained back to back with 2 different exercises, was the only training technique found to be inferior to all the other training techniques, producing less volume than every other method and producing lower EMG readings than traditional and pre-exhaust training. One thing to note about these studies is that most of the sets were taken to failure, so perhaps stopping short of failure on all the group supersets might lead to less muscle damage and soreness. For example, using your 10 rep max weight on the bench press, but stopping at rep 6, then finishing off with a pec deck. This might provide similar benefits to performing just one exercise close to failure, while allowing you to hit multiple angles of a muscle group, like the pecs. This is just a thought though, and there's no evidence to suggest that this would be superior to traditional sets, aside from possibly saving on some time. And on the topic of saving time, that seems to be the primary benefit of supersets. The studies on supersets have shown little to no performance hindrance when performing separated supersets, and some have even shown performance benefits from using antagonist paired supersets. At the very least, that tells us that supersets allow you to nearly cut your training time in half with no drawbacks and even potentially more training volume overall. Another note worth pointing out is that if you superset with something highly taxing like heavy squats, it's very likely that the second exercise, regardless of the muscle group, will be hindered to some degree due to total body fatigue from the squats. This is why adequate rest times are so important. As mentioned earlier, sufficient rest time has been shown to be important for hypertrophy, so your best bet is to make sure that you rest in between each set of each exercise in the superset. For example, if both exercises require 3 minutes of recovery time in between, you could structure it like this. Perform exercise 1, wait 1 minute, then perform exercise 2, then wait 90 seconds. Then by the time you get back to exercise 1, you've had 3 minutes of rest, you get 1 minute's rest in between exercises, and it's been another 3 minutes by the time you start exercise 2 again. In summary, supersets are great for saving time while training. You're far better off using separated supersets, combining exercises for different muscle groups, rather than 2 exercises for the same muscle group. There's likely no additional benefits of supersets over traditional straight sets, aside from the time saving. There may be a slight performance benefit when combining opposing muscle groups, like biceps and triceps. And finally, rest time is still important for hypertrophy, so make sure you rest in between sets, even when performing supersets.
Alright everyone, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like and share the video and subscribe to the channel to keep up to date on everything fitness. Leave any questions and comments you have in the comment section down below. Follow me on social media, and I'll see you guys next time.